who should go overseas, just in general, not necessarily to UAE?
I would encourage everyone to go abroad, especially while you're young and you might not have as many ties to wherever that might be. And there's a lot of privilege within saying that. Global education opportunities are hard to gain access to. You often have to have the social capital to learn how to find those, but then you also have to have economic capital to, fund you going to study abroad or even just getting you to where you might need to go work. So I encourage everyone to do it. But with saying that, I recognize there's a lot of privilege in saying it's a hard path to go down if it's unfamiliar to you. And again, I want to reiterate, if any of you have interest in finding jobs abroad or studying abroad, please reach out to me specifically or reach out to any of the panelists. I'm going to put them up on the stake too for that, because we're all educationalists on some level right now, giving our knowledge forward. So I would encourage everyone, with the caveat of also thinking about maybe your identity hasn't also always been represented in global education pop-in circles, and what can you bring to those conversations? So I think in the US particularly, we often have an image of who studies abroad, and we know that the research on it tends to be white middle-class individuals who study abroad. So let's think about how can we expand this discussion, and you might be the individual to do that. So I encourage everyone, especially if you might come from an underrepresented background within terms of global education.
Someone who wants to be exposed to, just like a lot of the panelists said, a lot of different dimensions. So if you want to really look at this globe from a bird's eye view, a lot of times we look at a certain situation or we look at a certain circumstance. And, in terms of when I was dealing with students, oftentimes there were issues that any educator can face, right? Where there's plagiarism or where there's other cases. And I often used to have a conversation with these students. Some of them are just being cheeky, just trying to get away with whatever they can, just like you mentioned about the memorization. And some of them had some interesting views that I didn't agree with about why plagiarism is okay, but I was able to understand where they're coming from and communicate to them what we feel that might not be the best way to go about it. So for some students, plagiarism was not about ethics. In fact, to the contrary, they thought they were helping out someone. So they thought that teamwork is what they were trying to do. But I told them that that's probably not the best way to go about it, because you're not really helping them. You might be helping them in the short run, but not in the long run. So someone who wants to be able to look at any particular issue in this world and see it from an entirely different view. And it's very hard to do that when you're in a certain comfort zone. So get yourself outside the comfort zone. I'm not saying make yourself extremely uncomfortable. You want to be able to be in a situation. And even that a lot of people do that. And that's admirable, where they go into a grassroots level in a different country and they contribute to that. So if you would like to discover who you really are, go out there. You'd be surprised and look at what the media is saying about every situation, and then bring that critical mindset to your own thinking process as well. Because at the end of the day, it really makes a difference in terms of whether you are being trained on how to think or what to think. And the best way to do that is to go out there yourselves, is to put yourself in those situations where you can see that, hey, okay, this is an uncomfortable situation for me, but it will really tell you more about who you are. You will discover a different version of yourself when you're in a difficult situation or when you're in a different environment overseas, because you will be with students that are of different mindsets. And that is a good thing. You should be in that situation. You should be able to have that conversation as educators. That's what we're trying to do, is have those discussions, even if they're uncomfortable. That's the most learning is actually done from uncomfortable discussions. So someone who is not just the cliched getting out of your comfort zone, that's true, but also if you like to really learn a lot about yourself, go out there and experience that. So that would be my piece of advice to anyone that would like to engage in education overseas, and I would definitely recommend it.
If you know what exactly you're trying to learn by going overseas and pursuing education there, go for it. because there is a potential that you might get overwhelmed, or there's just a lot to experience. So if you know what you want to learn over there, or if you're just comfortable with a lot of experience and just kind of taking it and making sense of it in your own personal way, then go for it. That's my very simple answer, because you're going to learn a lot. Just don't get confused. There's going to be all sorts of different perspectives. So long as you know what you want to learn out of it, go for it.
The answer lies in a type, and that type really lies in not what you have been taught to desire, but in how you have been taught to go about pursuing the things that you desire. What I mean by that is specifically from a behavioral perspective, studying what I do, I can tell you that a lot of our behaviors are shaped by our environments, our social environments, the environments that we've come up in. In short, the way we understand the world, or the world that we know, was developed within the first 5 years of the four walls of the house we grew up in. And so if you're not in, and that's a truth across the board. It's why we find ourselves many times addicted to our own thoughts and our own ideas of how the world works. We were taught those things, and we were stewed in those things. And so that's our limitations, and that's really what they become over time. Our limitations in understanding the world as a whole become our curse and our stumbling blocks more than they do our blessings and stepping stools. Education is like a lantern, and the fact of the matter is, you can't see without it. You can't discover any new oceans unless you get the courage to lose sight of the shore first. And so I would encourage those that have the courage to take that jump. First off, that would be one of the first parts of the type of person that should try to pursue something overseas. Now, there's other things. I spoke about your social environment, and there's a value that's added to socially significant behaviors that you will develop as a consequence of being exposed to different areas. I like to say this often, is that exposure creates expectation, and expectation influences behavior, and behavior creates our future. And so it all begins with the things that you are exposed to in life. That is important because, again, thank you so much, because a lot of us are right now, the world is being run by, I can at least speak from my perspective living in the United States, has been run by some people with very small views and understandings of people and different people groups. I just watched a week ago a debate between a European, a Canadian, two Americans speaking about the importance of people groups. And one was debating, one side debating how we don't need them, how it's not important, and the others why it is, which was fascinating to me that that's something to debate. Whereas if you were in a room with someone from a different culture, let's say if you were in a room with someone who grew up in a Jewish background, would you be so quick to offer them something that was not kosher? Would you even know? Or offer them something kosher, would you even know the difference had you not been exposed? Again, so it goes to exposure. Here's another thing to think of, I think should be considered, is I have a background in finance. I have about 13, 15 years in finance. And to understand the markets from a different perspective, when you're looking at, let's say, if you're just wanting to invest, if you're wanting to look into any investment market, and you want to, and you have a good understanding of how culture affects different markets, because anything that's purchased across the world is purchased by a type of thinking, a type of belief system. It's represented through cultures. So the way we think, the way we believe, those cultures influence and they affect the way markets move. This could affect your success even in finance. It could affect your success in business. Just exposing yourself to something outside of what you've known for your whole life. So again, it would come to having the courage to do that. And, it seems scary. I'm not going to say that it's not. You a lot of times are in a new place that you haven't been exposed to. You don't know many people. You may not be the type to walk up and shake a person's hand, and you run into that issue, an old adage that says, the trouble with having an open mind, of course, is that people are always insistent on putting something in it. But if you are willing to take that risk, I believe, and I have actually learned for myself, that what happens is an expansion more than a mitigation of your ideas and the way that you understand how things work. And that expansion helps to influence not just your world, but the world around you, others that are in your world, some that you may and may not meet. I'm an African-American man that lives in the United States, and a lot of people that find themselves in my same group do not have the exposure, do not have opportunities towards the exposure, don't have the resources, and or they just don't know how to get access to these opportunities. And so, again, and for the sake of being courageous, sometimes just standing and being a visual example and representation of someone who did can help to give another person the mindset that it's possible, and the exposure that could change their life and the lives of others. So I just wanted to be sure to say that as well. That's super important. It's a way that you can be able to give without even trying to, just giving by stepping out and learning more. Forums like these are what help to expand understanding of what's important and what's worth pursuing. If nothing else, we are in school not simply, someone said it earlier, not simply to learn how to test. I believe it was Sarah that spoke about it, learn how to test and memorize things, but more importantly, to learn and understand how to think. And exposing yourselves to as many different stimuli as possible can help to enhance your ability to think critically, and to think in a way that's measurably significant in this world. So that can and more than likely will be a direct result of forums like this. So thank you again for putting this together. It's helped to, I know, equate to some change. I know that it is, and I know that it will.